What is up, guys? It's Dan from Crypto Camacho, again on the road, driving, but would love to talk with you guys. And man, I just cannot believe what's going on in the world right now. I don't want to make this a political, show in general, but I just cannot help myself for a few things that are going on in the world, and I really want to get the audience's take and pulse and sentiment really on what's actually happening. So recently, Google, Facebook, Apple, who else? Twitter, maybe? I don't know if Twitter actually participated in this, but they recently banned Alex Jones and InfoWars channel, or content, if you will, across a variety of platforms. They essentially kind of conspired together and effectively deleted and shut down, deactivated the InfoWars or Alex Jones channels on YouTube, on Apple iTunes, so it's podcast, on YouTube, on Twitter, actually may not be Twitter, on Facebook. They effectively conspired and shut down his ability to create a show, right? To podcast, to create videos, to basically freely speak his mind and talk about whatever the hell he wants, right? They effectively shut him down. And I'm not usually one to get like all up in arms about the decisions that some tech companies are making, but man, that is something that we should all be thinking about and taking note about, because the implications of, sorry, I'm switching lanes here and I got to get on to a different freeway. The implications about what has actually happened is actually a little bit concerning to me, as a content creator, as a YouTuber, as somebody who values free speech, who wants to be able to speak my mind in any forum, whether public or privately, and not be ridiculed, not be castrated, if you will, and not be really kind of ostracized or demonized for my views. It's becoming more and more difficult to do that, right? And that to me is concerning as a content creator, because, what could happen to any of us at any time is that we be shut down because the powers that be, they don't like the content that we're producing, right? And this has been happening for a very, very long time in like the talk radio space, in other forums where, big government entities don't like what, or other businesses don't like what people are saying on the air. And so they effectively try to shut them down or try to balance, the market with a counter viewpoint by mandating, that there's an equal amount of counter arguments, within the market, right? As a kind of a mandate, or as a dictation, if you will. And what I find interesting, sorry, still driving here, guys. What I find interesting is that there's nothing the public can do about this. I mean, and yes, the tech giants have their freedom to shut down whatever account they want. I get that. But when they're conspiring together at the exact same time to shut down somebody that they think is dangerous, harmful, whatever the word may be, because they don't like his content or his viewpoint, that is concerning, right? And there's got to be ties to the state or the deep state, putting pressure on these tech folks to do this, right? Everywhere you turn in the United States now, everything is about politics. Everything is about race. Everything is about, hugging and trying to make sure everybody is equally and fairly, handled and treated and has equal rights and opportunities, and taken to the extreme level where it's just not practical and not feasible. I mean, things that are just ridiculous. I mean, I can't even tell you now on the media, like on the news, just like, you turn on CBS, NBC, CNN, whatever, Fox, whatever news channel you watch, it is completely now about black and white, race, no matter what way you look at it. It's continuously about white bashing and continuously about basically talking about how white people have white privilege, how white people have it so easy, so good. And I saw a meme the other day. It was pretty interesting. There was a white guy working at Starbucks with an apron, like the Starbucks aprons and hat, taking an order from I think it was like an Indian person or something, or maybe an African-American person. And the point of the meme was that, I don't even want to say it. I don't want to get in trouble. Never mind. I'm just going to skip this. I'll put the meme in the show notes if you guys want to see it, but I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get a backlash from this. The reason I'm making this video is because, guys, we are at concerning times, right? Our society, our civil society is deteriorating in front of our eyes, and not from a religious standpoint, but from like a civics standpoint. Civility is declining at a very rapid pace, right? Capitalism is being bashed everywhere you look. Socialism is creeping out of the woodworks everywhere you look. You have a couple of socialist candidates now within the U.S., within local primaries, which never used to be the case, right? That was like a dirty word a couple of years ago if you were a socialist, right? Which, we all know all roads lead to communism in one flavor or another. And I'm not going to say that like, speaking generally or broadly. I mean, there's clear examples of that. And so it's becoming more of a thing to bash capitalism, to bash white people, to bash the status quo as it has existed, for the last 50 years. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that per se, if it's done in a fair and equal way that does not, that does not bash or condemn or demean a particular race based on a bias of other people. Racism could happen both ways, right? It could happen with whatever color you are, not just if you have dark skin, but it could also happen with light skin, right? So there's a lot happening in the world right now, and it's concerning to me. I have some experience living in countries and areas where the society has been predominantly controlled by either communism or socialism. I've lived in South America for an extended period of time, in Argentina, Chile, Peru. I've kind of traveled the areas in South America. I've lived in Russia for a couple years, right? In Siberia. I lived in Yekaterinburg, Chelyabinsk, Surgut, a lot of different places that many of you probably don't even know they exist or know where they are. But in the deep, deep heart of Russia, I've lived in the cold for years. I have seen what has happened with socialist and communist societies. I've seen firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. And this was years ago, guys, like 15 years ago I lived there. So yes, things have probably changed a lot, but things, are what they are. I've talked to a lot of folks in these areas who grew up with communism, who grew up with socialism. I've become friends with a lot of these folks. And it was interesting, when I was out in those areas, the older generation, many of the folks would love communism. The mid-generation, like the Generation Xers, a lot of them would not like communism. They actually hated communism. And the millennials, if you will, they actually were a little young to have an opinion, but they generally speaking did not like communism or socialism. And I've actually known many, many people that have come from and actually moved away from those countries that are communists or socialists because they know the damage that it causes. And I'm, again, not, I don't know, there's always the argument of, well, Norway does it, well, Denmark does it, well, Sweden does it, Scandinavia has socialism and it works great. Yeah, well, there's a shitload of other countries that do it as well, and it does not work great. Venezuela is in complete and utter chaos and destruction right now because of socialism. Look at like the majority of all of the South American countries out there that have embraced that ideology, and most of them are shitholes. They're not very good countries, right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, even though it sounds like that. I love Argentina, I love Chile, I love Brazil. I love these countries in many different ways, but their political and economic systems are not good. They are just not good. They pale in comparison to what we have in the U.S. in many, many ways. And I'm not judging. I have lived in these places for months and months at a time, if not years at a time, in the case of Russia. So I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about here. And for people in America who have never even touched the soil of the large majority of these countries, to be touting ideologies and economic policies that they know nothing about is just utter nonsense. It's ridiculous to me. And I'm not going to claim to be an expert on, communist policies and socialist policies and capitalist policies. But, when you go from country to country firsthand, you see the culture firsthand. You see the living conditions secondhand. You see how people work third hand, right? You see the financial system and the state of the financial system. You see what, monetary systems people are embracing and how people operate and how they work based on incentives. And it's clear as day that we need to be very, very careful embracing these things. Now, that the tech companies in the U.S., I've actually been very, very disappointed with, that they're now taking a role in actually banning different content producers. It should be alarming to everybody, right? Because the more and more as the days go by, the mainstream media, the news outlets, the main news outlets, not the content on YouTube and not the people like me that are creating content for the sake of creating content, the main news outlets are very, 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 very much liberal, progressive leaning outlets and mentality, which is kind of a globalist type of mentality. They are more and more becoming in bed with these tech companies. And if you really look below the surface, it's the tech companies that are really running society at the moment. They have the most power. They have more power than the federal government, than the local governments. They have more power because they have more economic power and sway. They have more economic influence. They have more influence because of data, because the power that they have in the data that they have. I mean, data is power. They can literally see things and understand things culturally, economically, societally, in ways that governments can never, ever, ever understand because of the sheer amount of data that they have. And I'm talking about Google, I'm talking about Twitter, I'm talking about Facebook, I'm talking about Amazon. I'm talking about all of these massive, massive companies that are effectively data companies, that are effectively, spying and using your data to do whatever the hell they want with it, to change public opinion, to change public policy. This is a real thing. This is not a conspiracy. I've been in tech for 25 years. I've lived all over the world, many different places at many different times. I've seen a number of things, and what is happening in this country is alarming. It's scary. I actually saw Barack Obama speak in South Africa, about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that. He spoke with the president in South Africa about inclusion, about equality, about, white privilege. He talked about giving women more opportunities. All this stuff is not bad stuff, but when you look at really what's behind the facade, it is a little bit scary to actually see what they're talking about. Obama, as an example, he talks about, at what point does a person have enough money? At what point does a person need to start giving back? At what point does a person not need a bigger house, right? This is Obama talking in South Africa with the president of South Africa, right? Talking about this stuff while Obama recently bought and lives in I think it's like an $8 to $10 million mansion that's massive, that consumes massive amounts of energy, and then they just talk about this like it's a joke. Like, if you don't need such a big house and enough money, don't judge everybody else for having a big house and money, and then go out yourself and buy a big house and spend hella money and consume hell of energy while talking about climate change. It's absolute utter nonsense. It's ridiculous, right? It's very hypocritical. And what happened after that speech, Obama, it's almost in a very sly, slick way, trying to creep back into world politics, global economic policies, and formulation of policies on a global scale. He's creeping back into the environment, right? Into I guess maybe he never left. But what happened in South Africa, like literally a week or two after his speech about all of these like idealistic notions and ideologies, what happens in South Africa is the president of South Africa condones and sanctions and actually mandates that land be taken away from white farmers in various regions throughout South Africa because they are claiming that they were unjustly taken from black folks or black farmers during the period of apartheid, which happened maybe 30 years ago, something like that. And so now, as a restitution to those people, they're actually allowing people with the backing of the South African military to literally go and seize the property of these white farmers with no economic restitution, I guess, to these folks, right? Basically, the black farmers that claim that their land was taken are going in and they're forcibly taking the land back from these white farmers, and they're not giving the white farmers any type of monetary value. Like they're not paying them anything. They're not giving them any money to do this. They're just basically taking their land from them, forced by the gun of the military. I think that's alarming. I think that's scary as hell. I think that's craziness that they can do that, and that's being condoned, and there's not a bigger outcry of that happening. I mean, what if somebody came to your business, as a white person and said, you know what, 30 years ago, this building actually belonged to a black guy, and it was inappropriately taken. And so, sorry, you built a business here. Sorry, you have a business there. You're white. He's black. He deserves this property and building and business more than you do. So you know what? We're going to take it from you and give it to him, and there's nothing you can do about it because we have the military behind us, and if you do anything, we'll just arrest you or we'll shoot you. I mean, that is alarming. That should be alarming to anybody, and this is exactly what just happened in South Africa. Look it up. Read the news. This just happened in South Africa, and it is being condoned by Barack Obama and endorsed even. And so if this doesn't scare you, I don't know what would, right? The tech giants are conforming to this kind of global ideology, this one world a government, one world kind of equality movement that we see, and it's getting and gaining traction every day, and it's a little scary to me. I'm not an ideologue. I'm not a conservative or liberal. I am not a capitalist or socialist. I probably sit somewhere in the middle of all these debates, more maybe on the libertarian side. I don't really know even what I'd classify myself as. But I just see what's happening in the world, and it is not going in a very good direction. I mean, when you have to watch what you say about everything that comes out of your mouth, I mean, that's an unfortunate place to be in, right? When you start walking by different races and different groups of people and wondering if you're looking at them too long, if you're saying the wrong words, if you're allowed to talk about a specific topic or not, when you're in the workplace and you kind of like, know what everybody's thinking, but can't say anything because of political correctness. I mean, that is a very clear sign of societal degradation, if you will, and it's a little bit concerning. So anyway, not to make this a political rant, even though it has kind of turned into a political rant, just be aware of this, guys. Be aware of what's happening. Be aware that your favored, stars on social media could be ripped away at any point in time. And it's another real reason why decentralization is going to be a very, very big and powerful idea, because we need a decentralized Twitter, a decentralized Facebook, a decentralized Google, a decentralized internet, so that these players cannot control the public opinion, based on whatever political leanings they have. I mean, that's just utter nonsense that's happening. And I think we should keep the internet open. I think we should keep the dialogues open, no matter what the dialogues are, whether or not they're hate speech or not, because it's freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And if you shut down one person, one outlet, where do you draw the line? Who draws the line? Who decides that? And why do they get to decide it versus somebody else? It's very, very subjective, shaky ground that has really no bearing philosophically, no bearing to enable or to allow one group over another to make these kind of decisions, right? Because they're rooted in a variety of different, cultural kind of opinions in history, which is why people think the way they do on one side of the aisle or not. So that's my thought on that. I'm Dan from Crypto Camacho, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to know your thoughts on what's happening here. You could tie it to crypto or not, but I just find it disturbing what's happening. People are losing their jobs, losing their reputation over literally stupid, silly comments that they're making that are inappropriate, yes, but should their entire lives be completely destroyed by these things? Probably not. There's something bigger going on right now, and it's bigger than anybody would like to admit. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. I got to keep driving. I'm Dan from Crypto Camacho, and thank you so much again for engaging, participating in my YouTube channel, and I'll talk to you next time, guys. Later.